What up, and welcome to the Found Her podcast. I am your host, Kelly Chaika, and I am so glad that you're here. With this podcast, I want to help support and encourage you on the journey to finding the best version of yourself. In the Found Her podcast, we're going to dive deeper into topics like dating, faith, fitness and nutrition, my story, and lessons that I've learned along the way. I hope you stick around as we find and become the best versions of ourselves. What up, and welcome back to another episode of the Found Her podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Chaika, and I am so excited that you're here. Today, we are talking a more vulnerable topic than usual. It's a topic that I wanted to talk about for a little while, but I never really felt like ready, or I don't know. The topic is my faith journey, my testimony, whatever you want, my story, whatever you want to call it. And the big reason that I didn't ever want to share about it was just because I didn't feel like I was at a place of arriving in terms of, I don't know. I just feel like when people share their testimonies, normally they're out on the other end and they're doing so good, fully delve into their faith, all that. And I'm doing a lot better than I was, but I'm nowhere near where I want to be. But through that and just thinking about it a lot, I'm are we ever really? Do you ever fully arrive at where you want to be in your faith journey? I don't think so. I feel like it's a constant work in progress. You're constantly trying to learn, grow, and be better. And I honestly think it's more relatable to hear from someone who's still going through it and still having ebbs and flows. So that is what I'm here to do today. I'm just going to this isn't really like other podcasts in the sense that I'm going to give a bunch of advice. It's just me opening up about my story, sharing my faith journey. I'm kind of going to parallel my life with my faith journey. The beginning of it doesn't really go hand in hand, but towards the end they start to come together. So that is what this episode is going to be about. I kind of wrote a little bit on my phone only because I don't know how to describe this in a respectful, I don't know if that's the right word, a good way where I'm not getting crazy off track. I'm not talking about unnecessary things. I'm just trying to be respectful of all parties involved, while also sharing my story. I also just want to say, when it comes to transformations or testimonies, when it comes to your faith, don't feel like your testimony has to be this big, huge transformation. I've heard so many people's stories, and I think they're so cool when they overnight change and just become this newborn, incredible person. And I believe that can happen, but I think for a lot of us, that's not the story. And it's kind of gradual, and it just happens slowly over time. He starts to change and mold your heart into the person that he created you to be. So, that's that. My story is not some big crazy thing. It's my story, and I don't know, I guess I'm sticking to it. Me having a country song stuck in my head. Anywho, so if I'm looking down at my phone, that is why. If you're listening, so happy you're here. If you want to come and watch, it's on Spotify and YouTube as well. But just starting right off in the beginning of my life, I was raised, I have two parents that are still together. They're amazing. They have the most incredible marriage I've ever witnessed in my entire life. Their love is the love that I aspire to have one day. And I have one older sister. She's 3 years older than me. We were raised Catholic initially. My mom went to a Catholic school. She raised us Catholic through elementary school maybe. And then we ended up switching to Lutheran, only because my mom was very social, much like myself. She liked to talk a lot, wanted more community in the church, and the Catholic Church definitely lacked that. But throughout my childhood, we did definitely pray at night, but my dad was never really strong in his faith. He just told me this story a couple of years ago, but he kind of always believed, but not really. But when him and my mom got married, they had to meet with a Catholic priest before, and the priest basically told them that their marriage would fail because they didn't have the same religious beliefs. And it is so sad because that is what he says is the turning point of when he was I'm done. That turned me away from it altogether. And it's sad that people go through that and have those stories, but that is their story. Now their marriage is incredible and they've proved them wrong. But for that reason, my dad never really pushed faith on us. He didn't really ever want to go to church. My mom more so did it as like a feel good thing. And so that kind of translated down to us. I never really understood the faith. I always asked a lot of questions and it never fully made sense to me. I remember being a kid and like crying myself to sleep at night or like crying to my parents, being like, what happens after we die? Like, is it gonna be black? Like, is the world gonna end? Like, it was just, I don't know. I was like, we go into darkness for eternity. Like, that's terrifying. I just didn't understand what like having faith meant or like heaven was. Jesus, like, none of it. It just didn't make any sense to me, even though I went to school and all of that. So, that was the beginning of my journey. Much like everyone else, kind of in that same phase of life. Like we just went to church because our parents did. We went on holidays, so on and so forth. Throughout my like elementary school and middle school years, I was definitely more of a follower. I was just like, I mean, my sister is my older sister, so I followed her around everywhere. I followed all my friends around. I'm like, tell me what to do, I'll show up and do it. And it's so funny because my whole life I'm like, I'm a leader. No, Kelly, you're not. You're quite literally, we're such a follower. Um, but going into high school is when things kind of started to take a turn for me and not for the better. I started drinking pretty young. Like, I think I had my first drink when I was in eighth grade, like shots of like tequila and whiskey. It was all in good, like, innocence. It was just a friend and I sitting in a basement taking shots of whiskey. Like, how embarrassing. We had no idea what we were doing. We were just being rebellious, like, whatever. But it really started to pick up. So it really started to pick up a lot more when I reached like my sophomore year. I started partying a lot more. I got fake IDs, I think my junior year of high school. Um, and I was like going downtown. I was just getting crazy. Um, and my sophomore year, I had also quit sports. So I didn't really have much like extracurriculars to do. I literally, all I had was like me, myself, and I, and then my friends and alcohol. So I started experimenting very young, and it is what it is. I met a guy when I was, I think, a sophomore, who also drank a lot. He smoked cigarettes. He had a wild group of friends that were fun at the time, but just like didn't really have a lot of like parental guidance. It's just crazy. Like, it's so hard for me to describe my high school experience because when I look back, it feels like such a fever dream. Like, and maybe that was because I was drinking so much, but I just don't fully remember all of it. Like, I remember memories and like going out and drinking and doing that, but that's like all I remember. I don't remember a ton outside of it, which is weird. But I started dating a guy my sophomore year, kind of dating, chatting, whatever. He didn't really have a lot of parental guidance. It seemed like a lot of his friends that he had didn't have that parental guidance either. And so they were just like wild cards. They're like, let's go out, find the next best thing. Like, we're all just like seeking fun, adrenaline, whatever. Like, we're young. We were just going and getting crazy. Um, so at the time, it was fun. It was exciting. I don't want to downplay it at all, or like, I don't know how to say this because I love majority of the people that I met during that time. Like, they were so fun, shaped me in a lot of ways, made me the person that I am today. It was very toxic, but we were all toxic together. Like, I equally contributed. We just like, the group itself was so much fun, great people, but all of us put together were just like very toxic, bad influences. So it is what it is. But as I got older, that started to not fill my cup as much. Like, as I got towards college, like the end of high school into college, I was just feeling like empty. Like, the weekends that I didn't have anything going on, I had nothing going for myself. I had no like activities to do. I didn't really have a ton of other friends outside from that group. And that guy was treating me very poorly, like very toxic, cheating, name calling, all of the things that you can think of, like just not nice. And so that over time just started to wear on me. I felt like I had no worth, I had no value. I didn't feel pretty. Like, I was just like constantly being beat down and all my insecurities were being like brought to light. And so I was at like a very low place and I was just constantly trying to prove myself. And it's never a good place to be when you're not feeling like you're fully loved or like accepted as yourself. But I was constantly trying to prove myself. And through that, I started to create this like hard external persona. I feel like deep down my whole life I've always been more of an emotional kid. Like I don't know. I just like was very in tune with my emotions as a child. And then as I got into high school, it was like slowly but surely those walls like started to get built up. The emotions, the cries all fell away. And I was becoming this like, I don't know if shell is a good word, but I was becoming this almost like shell of a person where I was building up that body armor that I've talked about, where like I was trying to protect myself because I was being so attacked all of the time, maybe from myself, but also from this guy and from other people, that I just became like this hard, jaded person. And from there, I started to fight a lot of people's battles. I was very like aggressive. I always wanted to be in the middle of everyone's drama. Um, if anyone had anyone that needed to get like yelled at, I was the first person to go up and tell them off. Like I was just like an angry girl. And I feel so sad for her because looking back, I'm like, that was like my cry of like, somebody help me. Um, but I also came off as like, people always were like, you're such a badass. You're so this, you're so like, so cool. But they also called me like the B word. Like, and I took it as like a badge of honor for a while. Um, but even when that would happen, like I would come home and be like, yeah, everyone thinks I'm such a boss. Da, 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 da. And then I'd come home and be like so upset and cry and be like, that's not me. Like, what am I doing? And I do think like I'm a very strong willed person. I will speak my opinion. But the way I was going about it was just so negative. Like I was pulling other people down. Um, and it was just like not a good feeling or a good place to be at all. But I do feel like it was more of a protective mechanism because I was being hurt that I was like, I'll hurt you first. Like before, like the world was becoming more and more apparent to me that it was like not a kind world to live in. And I was like, watch me hurt you before you hurt me because I don't know. Like that's just the mindset looking back, like remembering myself. That's kind of where I was at. Um, Hookup culture was also running rampant back then. Obviously, I had no worth or value in myself at all. And I was still trying to prove to this guy that, like, I was great. I was amazing. Like, I don't know why I wasted so much time on this said person. He's a great guy now, very successful, amazing. But, like, together, we were just not it. Um, but I just spent so much time trying to prove to him and, like, give in to him on whatever he wanted. And every single time I did that, I left myself feeling more and more empty. And every single day I did that, my worth just diminished more and more. It's like I didn't have an identity. My identity was him and it was whatever he wanted. And without that, I don't know. And I did it to myself, honestly. I take full accountability, but it's just wild how the enemy can use a person, a thing, whatever your vice is, the enemy will take it and use it so hard. I obviously wasn't in my faith at all. Um, I was showing up to like family holidays so hungover, um, never paying attention, falling asleep. Like it was just, it wasn't it. I was not anywhere with God. And thank goodness he's a forgiving God because wow. Um, but overall, it was just a very vicious cycle that I got wrapped into partying, drinking, smoking, sex, all of the things you don't want to be involved in. Like, I thought that I was seeking validation out of that. And the more that I did it, the more I realized how empty it makes you feel and how that is not where your worth comes from. Ultimately, your worth comes from God and from yourself, from your family, from your friends, from people that love you. And love and lust are a very, very different thing. And I had to figure that out really quick. But I was so trapped in this cycle myself, with this person, with this group of people. I just kept falling back into the same habits. I ended up going to school in like 3 hours away. I had a blast, but I was also crazy there. Partied way too hard, was drinking 5, 6 nights a week, just wild. And I'm so grateful that I met some of the people that I did throughout this journey because we've grown and evolved together. But overall, I was just a terrible, terrible influence. And it was not for my benefit. So I got in a lot of trouble when I was there. I ended up moving back, finished out college here, came back with the same guy, hung out with the same group of friends, just toxic. Okay. So we got that whole gist. Don't need to keep talking about it. But I got so wrapped into it that I saw no way out. And the only way out for me was to move away. And I just knew, like, deep down the whole time that I was going through all of this, like, for years and years and years, I was like, this is not my forever. Like, in terms of the way that I was acting, like, I was just like, I know that this is just a phase. I know I will grow out of this. I know, like, there's more to my life. Like, it's almost like God was with me the whole time, being like, you're better than this. Like, there's more to you. I was being convicted, obviously, but I just wasn't listening to it. And it took me literally being like, I gotta get out of here. Like, if I don't change, like, I remember I heard the quote that said, if nothing changes, or if you stay the exact same way you are right now, where will you be in 5 years? And it's like, if nothing changes, nothing changes. I'm gonna be in the same cycle, in the same spot, feeling just as unfulfilled as I was before. And it just doesn't bring you any value, purpose, worth, none of it. Like, I was so low, so done. I had dyed my hair red. Like, I was off the deep end. We're gone. Um, I was seeking guidance from like a spiritual, intuitive guy who was doing like tarot card readings. Like, it just wasn't good. Okay. I was seeking validation from all the wrong things. So I ended up moving to California. I'm like, I'm cutting all ties. I got to get out of here. Um, I got to be alone. But I moved with a friend. Um, and that move for me like genuinely changed my life. And it's not even the idea of like moving to California. It was just like breaking the chains of like, you have the ability to like get out of that. Like, you have the ability to want more for your life than other people want for you. You have the ability to like grow and change and become the person that you want to become. It is so easy to get stuck and wrapped up in other people's personas of you. I remember my best friend at the time before I moved away kept introducing me to groups, like new people we would meet. She'd be like, Kelly's the bitch of the group. Kelly, like, she's the one that will fight all your battles. And I remember it was around the same time that I was like trying to change myself and become better, or I wanted to. And I was just like, you're not helping me. Like, I'm trying to get better, and you just keep telling people that I'm like this bad person. And I don't think she had malicious intent in the way that she was saying it, but the way it made me feel was just like, she genuinely thinks that I'm like an emotionless person who just wants to fight and like that likes to have fun on the weekends or is fun to go out with. And I'm like, there's so much more to me than that. Like, do you not know who I am? And I felt that way in a lot of my relationships with people. And so that's what caused me to move away. So there's something so beautiful about starting fresh and like just having the ability to go to a new city, a new state, whatever, and be like, I have the freedom to be whoever I want to be. And nobody knows about my past. Nobody knows who I was, what I've done, nothing. They're just going to know me from who I am today moving forward. Um, and I just think that was so healing. Through that, I had other friends that was kind of starting to dabble in their faith that we were talking like virtually. And I started to get curious. I was very lonely. Obviously, I was living, um, my friend was working a lot. She had friends there that I was living with, but I was just alone majority of the time. COVID hit, and that's when I was like, all right, I'm going to try this out. Like, I still had so many questions about my faith, but I was like, somehow I became curious about reading the Bible. Um, and my friend and I tried out some churches there and like really started to like it. I was listening to a church from back home that was resonating with me a lot. I just genuinely enjoyed that it felt like there was some purpose or answer, or like I loved listening to TED Talks and podcasts and all of that, but I never felt fully fulfilled by that either. Or like horoscopes I was big into for a little while because I was trying to get answers. And then once I started diving into my faith, I'm like, this is the answer. Like, this is the way, the truth, and the life. Like, that is the way that you are going to find yourself and find your purpose and find your life. And that idea just started to like ring through in my head. And I remember I had heard a sermon that said, pray for God to soften your heart, or like pray for him to change your heart. And that is like the number one prayer that I remember praying for like 2 years. I was like, I just kept praying, like, God, I pray that you soften my heart, make me into the person that you want to become, because my heart had become so hard. Like, when I tell you I was so emotionless, it was wild. So I just kept praying, like, God, I pray you would soften my heart. I pray that you would make me into the person that you want to become. I pray that you would shape and mold me every single day. And I pray that you would make me aware of like the things that I need to change. And I prayed that every single night, and I saw it happen. Like, I watched just in myself, me start to forgive people. I watched just like hate and anger that I held onto started to melt away. I started to become happier, more motivated. I was like going after different goals. I wanted to change careers. Like I just felt like there was such a weight that was lifted off of me. Now, this ebbs and flows. So it wasn't like I suddenly started going into my faith journey and like became this new transformed person. It has been such a work in progress over the last several years, like probably 4 years and counting. Um, and I'm still on this journey. But slowly but surely, I started to grow in my faith more. Then I ended up moving to Nashville. My friend there was big into church. We would go to church together sometimes. And then she moved away. So I was back to going to church all by myself. So my faith for the longest time was like so independent. Like I didn't really have any community, it was just me. But honestly, that's all you need. Like you and God doing it. Like I started reading my Bible, I started to understand it. I like had a desire for it. And if you don't, that's okay. Like I talked to my dad and he's like, I have no desire to read the Bible. And I'm like, that's fine. Like, and if you want the desire, pray for it. Like whatever you pray for, just believe that it can happen for you because and you don't even have to believe, honestly, because when I tell you that I had little to no faith that my life would change in any regard when I first started dabbling in my faith, I'm not kidding. I had little to none. Like I was like, pray to soften my heart, and like 6 months went by and my heart was not softening, but like eventually it did. So just trust the process and it will come. Now I don't even know how to describe to you how I went from where I was then to where I am now. I still like to go out and have a good time. I still have great friends, but ultimately God has just shaped and transformed my life. My convictions change every single day. I do no longer believe in horoscopes or tarot card. Like I do not believe in that. But when it comes to this podcast, that is how I'm going to like wrap it all up with my story, just because this is a huge part of it, and a wild testimony. So a lot of times when it comes to your faith, you ask for signs, you ask for like messages. Like if you're really genuinely unsure, like it is okay to ask God, like, I need you to send me a sign. I need someone to come tell me. I need a billboard. Like you can ask him and I promise he will deliver. But when it came to this podcast, I had been thinking about it because I had been changing and transforming for a couple of years. And I was like, I've wanted to do this, but I just don't know. And then this past year, I was on a walk and I go on these worship walks, which if you haven't been on a worship walk before, I highly, highly recommend it. They're so fulfilling, but you literally can walk for like a mile, 2 miles, whatever. You listen to worship music, pray to God, talk to him about all your problems, come back, and I promise you'll feel like so much better. But I was on one of those walks and I was like, you know what, God, like if this isn't it, if you don't want me to do this, I promise I will remove the idea. I will delete the notes tab from my phone. I will not do it. But I also will not do it unless I get a hard, clear sign from you saying, this is what you're supposed to do. Start the podcast. Like, I was like, I need a billboard. I need a message. I need a letter. Like, whatever you got, I need it because I have zero clarity and I'm not good at hearing your voice. So I need something. And when I got home from that walk, that very day, I got home, I checked my mail. I had a letter from a friend, and she was just like sending me some encouragement, whatever. And at the bottom of the letter, it said start the podcast in all caps. I still have the letter. I could probably go grab it, but all caps, start the podcast. I literally got full body chills, started crying. I sent her a voicemail being like, do you actually know? I was just on a walk, whatever. And then my sister sent me a message the very next day. I didn't even tell her about it. Sent me a message the very next day. We weren't talking. We were kind of in an argument. She sent me a message that said, like, you're never going to be fully ready. Just start. And it was just like so wild. Like the validation that he gave was like, you need to do this. And if it's only 20 people, I don't care. Like, it's just when you start to listen to God's word and like what he wants for your life will change. Like the things that bring me joy now are wild. The things that fill my time are like my faith, my like working out, making new meals, hanging out with new friends, going to get coffee, going for walks. Like there's so much out there to life, and thinking back to how unfulfilling my life was before and how much I just found validation in all the wrong things. So my only encouragement to you is if you're in that spot where you're just struggling and you're like, I feel like I don't have a purpose. I am at my low. I'm not validated. I'm not worthy. Whatever those feelings are, start to talk to God. And like, you may feel crazy, and that's okay. Like, I felt so crazy. I still do sometimes. I'm like, I am on a walk talking to who? Like, it's okay. But just know there's someone out there. His name is Jesus. He died for you and he loves you. And no matter what you've done, no matter what you do, like, he has already forgiven you. And you are so worthy just as you are. And if I can change and become better, so can you. You deserve a good life. You deserve to like find good love, to be loved by other people, and to not feel like you're scum of the earth. Um, but just know none of us are perfect. Like, we're gonna grow and evolve and change all the time, and that's okay too. So I know that was kind of a fast episode, wrap up, whatever. I just wanted to give kind of a backstory without diving too much into it. If you guys have any other questions about my story, I am an open book. I just didn't know how much to share. And I feel kind of uncomfortable doing it if you can't tell. But I hope this was encouraging. I hope you liked the episode. I hope it at least encouraged you a little bit to start to dabble in your faith, maybe. I don't know. Either way, just know you're never too far gone, and there's a plan for you. There's a plan for your life, and you got this. Peace and love.